Welcome to Holstein Connections, where we share the latest stories, insights, and news from Holstein Association USA and beyond. The largest dairy cattle breed association in the world, Holstein Association USA provides leadership, information, and services to help dairy producers worldwide be successful. Whether you're in the barn, on the road, or just tuning in for your dose of dairy news, we're glad you're here. This is Holstein Connections.
Hello, Holstein enthusiasts. I'm Jody Hoynoski, your host for today's Holstein Connections podcast. I'm also the programs director for the Holstein Foundation, the organization behind youth contests like Dairy Bowl and Dairy Jeopardy, as well as the Young Dairy Leaders Institute. As we head into the season of giving thanks, we thought it would be fitting to talk with one of our longtime supporters and arguably one of the most interesting people on the planet, Mr. Frank Conyngham. So welcome, Frank, and tell us, where in the world is Frank today?
Well, first of all, thank you for your kind comments. As we spoke earlier in the day, it's hard to believe we've been friends for over 20 years. So it's great to see you. Great to hear from you. So let me tell you about us. You've been to our home, and we live on 30 acres with our 4 dogs, 2 cats, and 30 some chickens. I'm retired, although active with a number of community boards and church work and other stuff. And Marion is a very active florist. So we are in the same home. We've expanded it and built a nice 2-car garage a couple of years ago. No more parking on ice for me, and as I'm in my 70s. So all's well.
Oh, it is just a beautiful home. And I remember when I visited once and it was like staying in a bed and breakfast. Marion had put fresh flowers in my bedroom and you guys were such great hosts. So for our listeners now on the map, if they were to try to locate you, where are you situated on the map?
We live in northeastern Pennsylvania, Luzerne County. Closest mid-sized city is Wilkes-Barre. And my family arrived from Philadelphia around 1830. An ancestor was working as an attorney in a case and came up the stagecoach and met a girl on the stagecoach and called his dad down in Philly and said, no, he didn't call him, he mailed him. Said, I'm getting married and I'm staying in Wilkes-Barre. We've been here ever since.
Wow. Now, Frank, I appreciate you bringing up some of your rich family history. You and your family have had a pretty significant place in the registered Holstein history books as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about your Hillside Holstein story?
Well, my great-grandfather was a coal broker, fairly wealthy man, and he had a farm in Wilkes-Barre where he grew crops for their household, but he wanted an estate. He wanted to breed cattle and horses and sheep and pigs. And so in 1881, he started buying up various farms, which now combined are Hillside Farms. And over 5 years, he was able to purchase over 400 acres. So that was 1881. We had jerseys at first and some Guernseys. I'm looking at an old barn book that's in front of me here that goes back to the 1880s. I'm not quite sure when they went totally Holstein. But I know in 1884, when the Dutch and U.S. herd books were merged, I think they were merged. I'm going to say 84. He imported a couple cattle from Holland. They were 2 of the first 300 to ever be imported from Holland to America. So we go back a ways. When we did sell the farm to the nonprofit and we sold the cattle, we were one of 2 oldest continuously registered herds in America. So that was a sad day, but things had to be.
That's a pretty amazing story. Those were pivotal years when the Holstein breed really started to take off, and your family made their mark in those early years. That's pretty cool. So I know when I was visiting several years ago, we drove by the old farm, the old Hillside plantation, and there was some, you mentioned a nonprofit that purchased it, and they were doing some preservation efforts. Can you talk a little bit more about what's happening at Hillside today?
Sure. A land trust had a spin-off group, and the doctor, veterinarian who was in the head of that group, approached our family and said, we want to preserve your 400 acres for eternity. And we'd like to buy the barns, the ice cream business, the bottling plant, the greenhouses, the big house on the hill, the whole kit and caboodle, if you will. So today they're operating as a nonprofit. They do have cattle in the barn, but they're not registered and they're mostly not Holsteins. But a young fellow who's the herdsman apparently has a pretty good eye for a good heifer, because when I drive by and stop and take a look at the girls in the herd, I see some good ones, and it makes me happy and sad at the same time.
Now, you mentioned the ice cream shop. That's something I seem to recall you had started on the Hillside operation. And I think that ice cream shop had some kind of role in you meeting your lovely wife, Marion. Can you remind me of that story?
Well, let's start with the idea of how we came about to build the store and the dairy and start the ice cream business. My brother was getting out of grad school. I was getting out of college. And one Thanksgiving, we sat and said, Park, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know, but I really can't imagine my life if I'm not on the farm. And he said, I get it. He had young children, so he was settled. We opened the store in 1977 and started making our own ice cream shortly after that. And we had a handful of other parlors around, and we had an ice cream truck. And in 1981, her mom brought her into the dairy and approached my brother and said she needs a summer job. What do you think? And Marion's mom and my oldest sister were best of friends, so I knew her since she was a little girl. And when she went off to college, I realized that I didn't want to be without her. So when she got out of college, we got married right away. So we've been married 36 years.
Oh, that's awesome. And how cool. You guys were kind of the OG on-farm processors, right? I mean, those were early years to have that sense of where you wanted to head to open an ice cream shop, because it's pretty trendy today, but back then you guys were trailblazers, right?
So drug milk stores were popping up all around Pennsylvania. We were definitely in the first wave. Will went to the school at Penn State, the creamery, and learned how to make mix and that sort of thing. And we were, as you say, right now, food trucks are everywhere. But we put together an ice cream truck with hard dipped ice cream, and we're a huge hit. In summer times, that might be all that I did, because we had other fellows to help manufacture. But, we went to festivals, we went to birthday parties, we went to private parties, you name it. And it was great fun. And the new group has sold that truck because they found it too hard to schedule. But at one point, we had enough stores that I had 60 teenage girls working for us. And that's why scheduling is the hardest part of the job.
Well, and not to mention the labor issues everyone's facing today, right?
Yeah, I couldn't afford to pay them all today.
So you also had, in the spirit of giving back, and our discussions we'll get into a little later today, you also were pretty involved in the National Ice Cream Retailers Association. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, Joey, that is a great organization. I don't remember who first told me about it. Probably one of the vendors or salesmen that would call on us. And we joined the association, and I'd go to the convention, which would be typically in October, because most of the mom and pop retailers would close down for the winter. And they'd make money all summer, and just like a squirrel, they'd put it away and wait till the winter comes. And I got involved. I ended up getting on the board, ended up being president. And we'd have conventions where there might be 300 or 400 folks attend. And the great thing about that, since we were all over the country, we weren't competitors in any way. So if you had a secret that you wanted to share, you'd share away. A little different from the Holstein conventions. But if you found a bull that was really good, you kept him to yourself. But made many wonderful friends in the ice cream world. People that own ice cream shops tend to be fun.
I can imagine, if you're any example of that, Frank. Now, you mentioned early on, we've been friends for over 20 years, and I don't know if I can say this enough, Frank, but you've been a great role model in my life. And when it comes to fundraising for a cause, you've taught me so much and helped lead me, train me, inspire me to be a better fundraiser. You used to also do a lot of fundraising and supporting of the local food bank organization in your area. Are you still involved with that?
Well, no, I'm not, but let me tell you how I got started there. It's a fun story. After we sold the cattle, and that was 2/3 of what I was doing in the later years, selling bulls and embryos and being in that game. I decided that I needed to find something else because there wasn't enough profit in our store to pay my brother and his family and me as well. And I gave notice, but didn't know where I was headed. And one evening I went to a restaurant. I saw a fellow sitting at the bar having dinner who ran this 5-county huge food bank in our area. And he said, sit down and buy a beer. And we talked, and I told him that I was looking for work, and he offered me a job as a development director. And an hour later, he gave me a raise. So when I went into his office a few days later, I said, do you remember what I offered you? I said, yeah, and I remember the raise. He goes, damn, I was hoping you'd forget that. So I worked there on and off for 15 years or so. At one point, I left, and they had planned to build a new 50,000 square foot storage area with refrigerators and freezers and all. And he asked me to have lunch with him, and he brought Gretchen, your friend, and he said, Frank, I need you back for the capital campaign. You can stay as long as the capital campaign takes, but I need your help. You've got lots of good connections. So I did that. We successfully raised $7 million. And just last year, they had to add another 25,000 square feet because the need is so great. Do I still do anything for them? No, I don't. I stay in touch with the new CEO and Gretchen, a grant writer, and my right arm during our fundraising days. So I do sit on a board of a local performing arts center, and I do actively try and get folks to support that. It's a wonderful building, a old Victorian theater.
Yeah, always giving back, Frank. And you mentioned our friend Gretchen. So for our listeners, our friend Gretchen, Frank introduced me to her at an Association of Fundraising Professionals meeting that Frank encouraged me to go to help me up my game in the fundraising world. And he was working with Gretchen at the time. And we discovered we're birthday buddies, same date, same year, everything. So we shared that bond, and she's a special person. And Frank, I appreciate you sharing that story about your food bank support. And I know you continue to get on that soapbox to this day as often as you can, because there's a continuing and growing need in that area.
There's never been more of a need than there is right now.
Now we are going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll continue our conversation with Frank Conyngham.
This season of giving, it's easier than ever to make a difference. Supporting the Holstein Foundation now takes just a moment with their new online donation system. You can give a single gift or set up a recurring contribution on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. The Holstein Foundation is a 501c3 organization that has been serving the dairy community since 1989. Their mission reaches youth, young adults, and farming families across all dairy breeds nationwide. The Holstein Foundation is focused on programs with an impact. Their cornerstone initiative for young adults, the Young Dairy Leaders Institute, helps build confident, forward-thinking leaders for the future of the dairy industry. For youth, the foundation supports engaging activities like Dairy Bowl and Dairy Jeopardy and provides free educational workbooks and show ribbons to encourage learning and participation. They also award collegiate scholarships funded through memorial gifts, supporting students pursuing dairy-focused careers and helping develop the next generation of dairy professionals. If you're looking for a meaningful way to give back this season, consider supporting the Holstein Foundation and the future leaders of the dairy community. Every gift makes a difference.
Let's talk about the Holstein Foundation a little bit. I had to look this up because I couldn't remember exactly, but you joined the Holstein Foundation Board of Trustees back in 2004 and served until 2013. So when it comes to serving as a Holstein Foundation board member, what was your most memorable experience?
You know, there were giants on that board, guys quite a bit older than I at the time. closer to my dad's age. So they knew of his reputation. He was a national director. He'd actually run for president of the Holstein Association. Narrowly lost that election. But Doug Maddox, Charlie Warden, Tom Nunes, Yeagers, John Beerbaum, they're all people I admired tremendously. And even as the young guy, my opinions counted just as much as anybody else's. And that was a wonderful feeling.
Giants is a perfect word for that, Frank. And another one, when I was thinking of preparing for this morning, I was thinking about when I had visited you once and we drove to visit one of the registered Holstein Giants in Pennsylvania, Don Siped. Do you remember that trip?
Of course I do.
Remember he and his wife made that wonderful lunch and we sat at their kitchen table and yeah, Giants is a great word. You know, Don served on the Holstein Foundation board prior to your serving and was, you know, a great association leader as well. So yeah, it was a cool class of folks.
He and my dad and Obie Snyder were all on the Holstein board as Pennsylvanians, of course. And they were dear friends. Fine family.
So Frank, you went all in as a Holstein Foundation volunteer and serving on the board of trustees. But as you know, we have a lot of volunteer opportunities, including helping run our youth contests at National Convention each year. What would you say to someone who just wants to get more involved in giving back to youth in the dairy industry, but they haven't been brave enough to raise their hand yet?
Well, this is about as trite of a comment as anyone's ever said. But the youth are our future. It's the Holstein breed's future. And, you know, as a former 4-H'er, you know, I was in love with my heifer calf at the age of 10, 11, 12, and it never left my system, still hasn't today. I think working with people younger than you learn a lot from them. You learn a lot about yourself. And I would say, I was thinking about the Dairy Bowl, that your state and my state have both done very well training their kids to win the prizes.
Well, yeah, and you know, you think about the networking that brings those kids, the experiences in, you know, the sciences, the communication skills, all the things, right? And it's so cool to be able to give back. So a lot of people are familiar with the youth programs that we have with the Holstein Foundation, but we are also widely known as the organization behind the Young Dairy Leaders Institute, which is something you were also very involved with, Frank. So it was 2008 until 2014. You even stepped up to serve on the Young Dairy Leaders Institute Advisory Committee. That would have been YDLI classes 6, 7, and 8. So shout out to those listeners that are graduates of YDLI class 6, 7, and 8. We could tell stories on this topic for days, but I vividly remember you always making it a point and a priority to seek out class members that might have needed a confidence boost, someone to listen to them, or someone to offer them some sage advice. Frank, I don't think I can begin to recount the lives you profoundly impacted, but can I ask, how did your time volunteering with YDLI impact you?
Well, I can't count how many new friends I made over those years. About the time that I was leaving, Facebook had really exploded. And I was on it. And I bet I have 50, if not 60, YDLI classmates that are friends that post hellos, and they're all having babies now. And, you know, there were so many good, I don't want to call them kids, but I guess at my age now I can call them kids back then. But I got a special message from one of the young dairy farmers, Brad Groves, who sent me a note recently saying, I want to thank you for all the time you spent with me, and I want you to know that I'm running for the board of the Holstein Association. Well, there it sums it up.
Pretty special memories there. So on YDLI, considering what we do for young adults, if there's someone that's a dairy enthusiast between ages 22 and 45 out there that's contemplating applying for YDLI one day, what advice do you have for them?
Tell them to do it. Tell them to get the family to cover their chores when they have to go. It's only 8 days in 2 years. You make lifelong friends. You might even find your future spouse at one of those. Do we know?
It's happened.
It's happened? Okay, good.
I've been involved since YDLI class 5 through 12. I missed 13 and we're just starting up 14, but I can think of a couple couples already off the top of my head.
So
But you're right, the network that they take away is...
And the enthusiasm with which they jump in with both feet and get a project on the first round and go home and accomplish that project. They learn so much from the different sessions that we have, how to talk to the press, how to handle yourself when PETA comes around or whatever it is. It's an experience of a lifetime. Those kids will never forget what they learned and how many great friends they made.
Well said, Frank. So we talked about YDLI and our youth programs that are all part of our everyday activities with the Holstein Foundation. And annually around Thanksgiving time each year, we ask folks to consider making a gift to the Holstein Foundation to support those everyday efforts that are impacting these young people's lives in a real way. And we know we can always count on you for that, Frank. So why is it that you do continue to support the Holstein Foundation?
As a former development director who appreciates when gifts are made, I would be a total hypocrite not to support a lot of the nonprofits that I'm involved in, and I do. And recently, my attorney called me in to look over my will, and the Holstein Foundation is still in it. It was such a great time in my life to be involved. Having lost the farm and lost my cows, it was wonderful to be with people and talk the industry.
Well said, Frank. And yeah, I'm glad you brought up your plans to include the Holstein Foundation in your will, and I'm glad that's still part of the conversation. You bring up another great opportunity that every little bit helps when we do our annual appeal, right? And no matter what amount it is, we need every bit we can to support the everyday operations. But, if it's not in the cards for you today to think about what you can leave behind as a legacy, I think that's a good thing for folks to consider. I'm glad you brought it up. We also depend at the Holstein Foundation a lot on volunteers, like you did with YDLI. We need a lot of volunteers to run our youth contests. We need volunteers to serve on our board of trustees. Do you have any advice for people thinking about getting involved in the Holstein Foundation?
If you love the industry, go to one of the heartbeats and learn from, as I mentioned, the giants that I was able to sit at the table with. You'll meet people that you learn things from. You'll meet people that you admired ahead of time. It was worth every ounce of energy and every dollar spent to get there to do those things. So I encourage people to do it now.
Frank, you have a great zest for life. So I have to ask this question. What about life in general, Frank? What advice do you have for our listeners?
Everything you do, have fun, because laughter makes your troubles go away. That's about as pithy as I can get.
Well, it was fun to share some laughs with you today and reminisce a little bit, Frank. But before we let you go, I need to close in our traditional would you rather questions. So I've got 5 rapid fire would you rather questions. Frank, are you ready?
I have mine in front of me.
And did you study? You cheated, didn't you?
These are all easy.
All right, well, let's go. First one, vanilla or chocolate ice cream?
Any ice cream connoisseur knows vanilla is what identifies the quality of the product.
Love it, and I agree. All right, second one, ice cream cone or sundae?
Sugar cone.
Sugar cone, very specific. I'm in with that too. All right, third question, travel east or west for a National Holstein Convention?
Well, I'm going to tell a little story of the answer to that question. I remember going to California as a 13-year-old, I think. We went to Disneyland. I remember going with my dad to Seattle and having dinner in the Space Needle the year they opened it. So I've been west. I've been Midwest. But the story I want to tell about East is the convention in Philadelphia in 1976, the bicentennial year. My dad, as I mentioned, had run for president. He was appointed the chairman of the 76 Holstein Convention, which was a lot of work with a lot of committee men and women. But here's the story that I like to tell. The scheduled speaker was none other than Joe Paterno, Penn State. And my mom called me in my room and said, I'd like to invite the Paternos down for a drink before we go to the dinner. I said, Mom, I really doubt that the Paternos drink. And she said, well, you come down anyway, and you can have a drink before the dinner starts. So I'm downstairs with Mom and Dad in their suite, and there's a knock on the door, and it's Joe Paterno. And he comes in, he gets introduced to my mom and dad and myself, and Warren Sutton, our farm manager, who would have been a really good football player if he wasn't a farmer. Joe's looking at him and saying, what year are you in?
What position you play?
Yeah. So I went over to the bar. I said, Coach, what would you like? And he said, do you have bourbon, Frank? I said, yeah. He said, give me a bourbon on the rocks. Sure. And he goes, you know what? Sue's not here. Make it a double. And if I remember, he had another. And when he took to the podium, I'm not saying he was a little tipsy because he wasn't, but when he got to the podium to start his speech, first thing he said, well, he thanked my dad, and they both were Ivy Leaguers, so that was a nice tie-in. But he said, whose idea was it to put all the Ohio tables in front of me?
Oh, no.
And the Ohio State fans, they loved it. They thought it was hysterical. So
Oh, yeah.
that's that story.
Anything to get some Buckeye fans riled up, right? So what was it, East or West?
I met a girl at Disneyland, so I'll say West.
All right, we'll go with that. All right, the fourth question, barn cat or farm dog?
Well, we never had a farm dog because too close to the highway. Of course, there were cats, but they were pretty much untouchable. But in my house with 2 cats and 4 dogs, I have to say I love them all the same.
Oh, all right. I'll let you go on that one. Last question. YDLI reunion or high school class reunion?
Well, I've never done a YDLI reunion, and I know I'd like to sometime. I am a big proponent of going to my prep school reunions and getting on the phone and telling the guys, come on, we're getting older. You know, let's get together and have a laugh. Reunions sound like fun. You and I need a reunion.
Yeah, we do. We need to make this a regular occasion. No big surprises there for me, though, Frank. I'm lucky to call you a friend and a mentor, and I hope our listeners enjoyed getting to know you a little better as well and hear more about why you're such a great supporter of the Holstein Foundation. So thanks for joining us in the fun chat, Frank.
Well, it's been great. Available anytime you want to talk about anything.
All right, that sounds great. So in closing, I would just like to add our Holstein Foundation website, www.holsteinfoundation.org. It's a great place to learn more or even make an online credit card contribution. Every donation matters and makes a difference. So thanks to all for supporting the Holstein Foundation's mission, educating and developing future leaders for a vibrant dairy community.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Holstein Connections. Whether you're in the barn, on the road, or just tuning in for your dose of dairy news, we're glad you're here. Until next time, this is Holstein Connections.